recording now. So on behalf of the Football Collective, I'd like to just say welcome to everybody here today. Thank you to Jean Williams for getting such a brilliant group of people together to talk about Italy 1970, celebrating the first Women's World Cup. So I'll hand over to the players, and if we can just sort of go, maybe Barbara, starting with you, if you can introduce yourself, how you started with football, and then we'll hand over to Anna for the presentation.
Okay, my name's Barbara. It was Dolling at the time when I played, and I think from a very early age I'd always wanted to play football. When my brother got his first football kit, I was just so envious, so I thought, I've got to do something. So I started playing at school with the boys, but of course we couldn't play in their teams, so we could only play in the playground at lunchtimes. So I did that, and then decided I wanted to move on. I did think about joining Luton Ladies at the time because I lived in Dunstable. And then one of the other girls played netball with my sister and said Barbara should come along and join Chiltern Valley. So that's how I got into Chiltern Valley, went along, and it was very close to the time that they were, or Harry Batt, the manager, was trying to organise this team to go away. So I sort of joined just at the right time. I know Harry went round the country looking at different players, and we ended up with players from Nuneaton and Leicester and Preston, Southampton. And that's how I sort of got into the football. And then, so the next thing I knew, at the age of 16, I was being invited, well, firstly I was being interviewed by the Sun newspaper, which was amazing at that age. I wondered, it's a bit of a whirlwind really as to how it all happened, but the Sun newspaper came around, interviewed me, and I think we played one game together up in Leicester way against the Manchester Corinthians, and that was the only time all the girls got together to see how we all played, which is unheard of now. Anyway, we played one game, gelled a certain amount, and then off in Italy we were met, I think, at the railway station in London by the Sun newspaper, who again took our photo, and we ended up splashed across the middle pages of the Sun, and then the train off to Italy. And Martini and Rossi, played such a big part in my life, and I'm sure all the other girls, and treated us like royalty. I remember going to the grounds in the coach. It was very difficult to get the coaches in and out. Everybody wanted to talk to us, wanted autographs, and it was a bit strange because having gone from just playing in the local park to now at big stadiums in front of a crowd of 30,000 or so was quite a shock. But having said that, to me, it was, we went to play football and that's all you concentrated on. And unfortunately, I never kept loads of the information about the tournament. We just went, we played the game, we went on to the next game. But to walk out in front of crowds like that, having had possibly 100 or so, if we were lucky at the local sports ground, was just something you wouldn't expect at that age. And Martini and Rossi looked after us so well, treated us like celebrities from start to finish, paid for everything. I'd never have been able to do all this without them. So had some amazing games, met some lovely people out there, a bit intimidated by the Germans and the Italians in their posh tracksuits and us in our scruffy gear. You know, you could see from the photo in the middle of the Sun, we looked such a mess. How anybody let that go in as an England supposed collected team was amazing. We just looked like a real motley crew in the Sun newspaper. It's embarrassing actually when you show people. But yeah, the Germans all had posh tracksuits. I think the Italians were professional. I'm not 100% sure, but that's what we were told. But we had a ball. We played at, at where Juventus played. We obviously played at Genoa Stadium. And just enjoyed it for what it was. It was just an amazing experience. So I loved it. I'm sure the other girls can add loads to that.
Yeah. So Louise, if you want to hand over to you.
Yeah. Hi everybody. My name's Louise Gardner, but it was knee cross when I played. I started playing when I was about 8 with my 2 brothers, And then when I was about 11, I played for the first team, Teuntonians, Patstone, and then Southampton. And I was very lucky because I didn't know Harry Batts, but apparently he went round looking for people. Scouting is the word, I think. And he happened to see me play and asked my parents if I'd like to go to Italy. And I was very, very keen. I was football mad. Thing is, my parents did struggle to get the £5 for the passport, but they managed to raise the money because, you know, my parents weren't very well off. Yeah, and as Barbara said, wow, the only thing you could say, it was a shame I couldn't do it now because, you know, when you're younger, I don't think you really appreciate it. But the actual Martini and Rossi were amazing. I say everything was paid for, all the crowds, the autographs, and as we walked out of, say, one of the stadiums, I think it was AFC Juventus, there was like 30,000 there. It was just like, my God, you know, but you just got on and done it. And Barbara was right about the Germans. I hate the Germans. Excuse me, I hope nobody's German here. But sorry, yeah, but yeah, they she was right. We were like tatters, really, but we just got on, we beat them. It was amazing. But yeah, if it weren't for Harry, there's no way I would have got picked up because I lived in Southampton. So he was a really nice man. He had a lot of insight for women playing football, but it was never ever recognised by the FA. And as someone else has said, it was such a shame that when we did come back, we were banned from playing. That I used to represent Southampton, and they were quite funny towards me. You know, I used to play, then they subbed me, used to play. And, you know, and after I did it, I actually played for about 12, 13 years non-stop. And then eventually decided to give it all up. It's a shame, really. But I've always had a bit to put a hand into football. I've had some football charity matches. I was the only woman, all men, to raise money for cancer. And now I'm 66 years old, and I'm playing football again. So I do walking football with the men on the Tuesday, and now I started a football on the Monday with women. And apparently they're setting a team up. It's called Trailblazers 71. So I might be their super sub. But anyway, that's something for the future. But yeah, with regards to Martini and Rossi, all I can say was I was brilliant. That's all I can say. It's the first time I've ever been abroad. So that in itself, you know, without my parents with me and, you know, and all these girls, I'm not being funny, I didn't really know them. Didn't know any of the girls. And for some reason, all these years have gone by and we've met, you know, the last year or so, and we've definitely got a rapport. It's really lovely because I don't really know them. And that's a weird thing to say. We just sort of put on, like say, on a train, turned up, went to these fantastic places around Italy, played in great stadiums, and yet we still got this lovely rapport when we meet up with each other. It's really lovely. And I just can't thank Martini and Rossi enough. It's a shame they didn't give us the drinks when we were out there, but of course we were underage. But it was absolutely, no, I loved it. It was a highlight of my life, and it's always be with me. And now I'm still playing football again. It's hard because of my age, you know, the stamina side. But yeah, it's good. I think that's about it. But I really, really am grateful to Martini and Rossi.
Thanks, Louise.
Thank you.
And Angie, if I could just hand over to you and you can introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Angela King. I started playing football at the age of 14. Chiltern Valley Ladies was the first team I ever played for. My father got me into it big time. And it all went on from there, really and truly. You know, when it once got 15 and a half, Harry said to us, would we like to go? My mother and father were a little bit hesitant to begin with, but knowing how much I loved the game, they said, yes, you go, we'll pay for you, and off we went, do you know what I mean? And we really had a really good time. It's one of the best things in my life. I've never gonna forget it. You can't help it. And as far as the other things go, really, I've said the same as Barbara and Louise. There's not much more I can say. They've actually said it all, to be honest with you. And we'd just like to thank Martini for what they've done for us. We've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you, Angie. I'm just going to come back to you on that one. Just go a little bit more in depth in your story, because you were working at the time, weren't you?
Yeah, well, when I was when I was the 1970 game, yes. No, I wasn't working. I was fine with that. That's fine. But when it comes to the 1971 game, when they asked me to go to Mexico, I couldn't go because I worked for the co-op then at the time, and believe it or not, they didn't agree with ladies football and wouldn't let me go if I'd lose my job if I took the time off, which is unbelievable. But that's basically what happened. You know, but as I say, the time that I had in Italy was out of this world. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and all the people that I was with, thoroughly. All right.
Wonderful. Thank you, Angie. Trudy, would you give us your memories?
Hi, can you hear me?
Sorry, I was on mute then. Yeah, sorry, Trudy next. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so very, very similar story, and I guess a common thread with most of the girls. Because we were girls, we were obviously playing football with the lads, because you know that was the only way to play, really. So I played from a really young age because my dad was a football referee. So as soon as I could toddle about, I used to go to the weekend matches with him and just kick about in the back of nets, and there were always people to have a kick about with. And did that for years, played football locally within the boys' teams. It was a struggle to get in. It wasn't really the accepted thing to do. They didn't really want you there. There were all sorts of excuses not to have you. And it was never really primarily the boys on the team. It was the people in authority, teachers and, you know, the so-called managers and people like that, who used to say things like, well, you know, if you've got boots, you can come and play, thinking that you wouldn't have. But of course we did have. So I got into a few local school teams playing that way, but always wanted to do more, but there just didn't seem to be any way in. And really the turning point for me, we were watching Opportunity Knocks on telly one night, the Huey Green thing, probably everybody remembers it. And right at the end of the programme, he actually said, don't forget everybody, if you're at a loose end at the weekend, there's a charity football match. The ladies are playing, ladies charity football match down in wherever it was. Why don't you go along? And I thought, I had no idea that ladies did that, you know, really? They can play professionally, they can play proper games on, you know, in proper teams. And so that was it, you know, I went on and on and on at my dad until I persuaded him to take me. We were there all day, watching all the matches. I was sort of racing about all over the place, trying to get as much information about different teams as I possibly could, because I just thought, this is what I want to do. This is how to get in, you know, you can do it. I don't know how you do it, but if I talk to enough people, perhaps if Dad talks to enough people, I might be able to get in. And really, really liked the look of Chiltern Valley. Had a look at a few teams, but went for trials at Chiltern Valley and thought, this is where I want to be. This is it. I thought it was just fantastic. I thought the girls were amazing, and couldn't really wait to get in. And so that was how I started with Chiltern Valley. And I suppose in many ways, very similar in that joining at the right time, perhaps, and then just being desperate to get selected to go to Italy. And like, you know, the other girls have said, I didn't really think much about what was happening at the time, because all I wanted to do was play the football. The sightseeing was great, the way we were treated was fantastic, but I think that we were all really quite focused on the game, because that was the most important thing. We just wanted to play football. Martini and Rossi, though, as sponsors, were just amazing, I have to say. And to this day, I can still remember standing on top of the roof of the Martini building, having a drink and looking out at the sights and things like that. And as been mentioned, seeing the German girls in their smart tracksuits, but thinking, well, we're going to beat you anyway, which we did. So the German girls looked very professional, the Italian girls looked very professional. We didn't, but we knew we could play football, and that's what we were there to do. So the social side of it, the being treated like superstars, all of that sort of thing was absolutely brilliant. A real sort of eye-opener for us all, I guess. And it set the scene for things to come for some of us. And it was just incredible. And, you know, to get back to England and to think to yourself, I played where the superstars play. I played in those big stadiums. I played in front of all those people instead of on parks where dogs poo and cows poo and things like that, you know. So it was just amazing. One of the best experiences that probably I've had, lined me up for Mexico. Carried on playing for a little while when I came back from Mexico. The problem was that with my dad being in the RAF, we got posted. And coming up north, there were very few teams around at that time. So although I was accepted onto the boys team in the school that I was at the time, it wasn't the same. It just isn't the same, because if you're not part of the team, if you're not doing daft things in the changing rooms together and having silly conversations and all going out together at the same time, and you're the only one in the other changing room getting ready for a match, it's just not the same. So I played a few times in a boys team, and then basically gave it up and went on to netball and running and all sorts of other things as well. So yeah, that was my story. But yeah, it was all because of Hughie Green.
Thanks, Judy. And finally, Paula, if you'd just like to give us your insight.
Well, I think the other girls have all covered the basics on how Martini and Rossi was the sponsors for us, and what a great job, you know, the experience. We probably wouldn't have done it without Martini and Rossi. As for my history, I started playing football from an early age, just with my brothers. I've got 4 brothers, so that's makes sense why I became playing football rather than girls things. I used to play, I had a big park opposite me, and I used to play with the boys over there, playing anytime I could. And then a neighbour introduced me to say that there was a team that I could play with, Chiltern Valley, and would I like to go? But it took a lot of convincing of my mum, because she didn't want me to play football. She wanted me to be a nice little girl, which unfortunately I wasn't. So I went along to Chiltern Valley and got accepted into the team. I was probably about 12. I can never remember exactly when I started. And obviously Harry Batt was the manager, and can't thank him enough for my football career, really. I actually went out in 1969 to Italy and played in a European game with the team. I just turned 14 in the October, and the first match was the 2nd of November. And then come the 1970 thing, I was possibly the youngest in the team. I would have been 14 and 8 months, something like that. And just the experience, and as you say, you go over, everything is the football. You don't really appreciate it at that age. Looking back, I was very, very, you know, it was just football, football, football. As Barbara said, you know, everyone's in nice smart tracksuits and we look like the scruffs, but we went out there, we beat Germany, who had just knocked the men's team out. So that was like of the World Cup. So that was quite good, that the girls were doing better than they were. Not that it was really appreciated. I think the only memorabilia I have from actually going out to Italy was the Sun newspaper cutting that Barbara mentioned. And I've since got a photo of the team sent by Val Cheshire, who unfortunately isn't with us today, to join in this, as she apparently has lots of memorabilia of all the games. So it was good to get a team photo. Recognise so many from, you know, from playing in the game, but a lot that I don't recognise. But the experiences, you can't really appreciate them at such a young age. And I was lucky enough to go out to Mexico as well, with Trudy and Louise. I'm looking around to see the photos that are there. And again, Martini and Rossi was the sponsors over there. You know, there's no way my parents could have afforded for me to go on these things. Obviously coming back, we had to move teams because of the unfortunate dismissal of our team when we got back to Chiltern Valley. I went on to play for another team in Luton for a couple of years, and then I joined the Air Force myself, and after I'd been out there for about 6 months, I was out in Germany, and there was a friendly match between the servicemen and the civilians, and I asked if I could play, and they sort of looked at me a bit weird, and I said, oh, go on, please let me play. I haven't played for so long. And I was spotted playing and got approached to ask if I wanted to play for a German ladies team. So I managed to continue for another 2 or 3 years, and just stopped obviously to have children, and never really played since then. And listening to Louise, I might be looking up a walking football team in my area if I can, because it is a fantastic sport, and I think, you know, we should encourage as much of it as possible. It's come on such you know, big ground since our days, when it was frowned upon really, for girls. You know, people didn't understand why girls wanted to play football, but we were just as good as boys, and sometimes better, you know, because, you know, if we could, unfortunately, unlike Trudy, we weren't allowed to play in the school teams. It can only be boys. And my PE teacher said it was a shame because he would have had me in the team, but, you know, that was it then. So, yeah, I'm trying to see if I wrote anything down that I needed to mention, but no, it's just, you know, just to get together and see everybody, well, the few that we have, you know, because I hadn't seen Angela since 50 years ago. So it was nice to catch up with her. I've met Barbara a few times, and I've met up with Louise and Trudy, and you wouldn't have realised that 50 years have actually passed, because it's a bond that you make, I think, as a team, and you don't lose it. So yeah, and it's great this has been brought together for today. Thank you, Jean and the Football Collective, for making this possible. Is that okay?
Brilliant. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure.
So Anna, I'll hand over to you now. You're now the host, so you'll be able to share your screen with everybody on the Football Collective, if you want to start your presentation.
Okay, I'm trying to share the screen. So let me see if it works. Can you see it?
Yep.
That's perfect. So I would like to start with all my thanks for your kind invite, and especially thanks to Jean, because she made this possible. With Lorenzo Manetta, my colleague, we are honored to be part of this session, and we are excited by the possibility to hear about your stories and to hear about the first World Women Football Cup. So I'm trying to change the slide. Perfect. A very brief introduction. I'm the Martini Heritage Curator. The Martini Archive and Heritage Collections are part of the Bacardi Global Heritage Department. In Great Britain, for example, we have the Whiskey Archives and the Dewar's Brand Home in Scotland, but also the Laverstock Mill for the Bombay Gin in England. I tell you just in case you're looking for good places to visit. But we are based, the Martini Archive, in Italy, nearby Turin, where the historical production plant of the brand is based since 1864. So you can visit there Casa Martini, our brand home, that includes the Mondo Martini Gallery with a lot of details on our brand history. So what do we keep in our archive? A lot of different things, as you can see in the image. For example, the more classical administrative and HR registers or the correspondence, but also photographs, advertising campaigns, bottles, trophies, medals, gadgets, and everything else concerning the life of the company since 1863. That helped us to rewrite the story of the sponsorship on the Women's Football Cup. But the link between Martini and sport has a long tradition, because the oldest Martini sport sponsorship we found in our archive is one on cycling and dates back to 1914, so before the First World War. Then in 1958, the Martini International Club was born, and was born to sponsor many sports like soccer, motorcycling, swimming, tennis, cycling, skiing, basketball, horse racing, hockey. So it's really impossible to list them all. The most important chapter of the Martini sports sponsorship is the Martini Racing Team that was born in 1968 and was mainly dedicated to car races. I have to say that sponsorship of women's sport really stands out, such as the Martini Fencing Trophy, the sponsorship of the first Women's Football World Cup that you know very well, and a support to the Women's Himalayan Expedition, and also a sponsorship to the Women's Golf Open. But let's talk about our World Cup. In 1970, the International Federation of European Women's Football, that was based in Turin, organized the first Women's Football World Cup in Italy. The championship took place between July 7th and 15th, and took place at the end of the Men's Football World Cup in Mexico. I know that you know very well this information. So these are some images and documents that we keep in our archive. As you remember, I'm sure, the competition was attended by 8 of the most representative teams in the world. So Austria, Czechoslovakia, Denmark, Mexico, Switzerland, West Germany, and of course England. And the matches took place in the stadiums of Bari, Bologna, Genova, Napoli, Milano, Salerno, and Turin. So the World Cup had a considerable public success, as you said, so much that the final at the City Stadium was followed, it seems, by 50,000 spectators. What about the trophy? In addition to the economic support to the event, Martini and Rossi decided to award, on the model of Rimet Cup, a special trophy that was called Trofeo Martini and Rossi. It would have been assigned to the team that had won the World Championship for 3 times, even non-consecutive. The Golden Cup was inspired to the Nike displayed at the Louvre Museum. And the players of the tournament team would have been given a copy of the trophy, while the original one would have been kept by the federation. This is the reason why in our archive we don't keep, unfortunately, a copy of the trophy. But we found this medal that was awarded to the players. I don't know if you have one, you will tell me later. These are some other photographs that we have in our archive. Unfortunately, they are all about the Danish team, so apologies for that. But you can see here the roof of the Terrazza Martini in Milan that you were talking about before. So the rounds were disputed between 7 and 11 July 1970, and the final on 15 July. So the Women's World Cup disputed in 1970, is today considered unofficial. And starting from 1991, a World Championship of Women's Football is organized by FIFA. So the competition organized by the Federation in 1970 took place for another edition in 1971 in Mexico, as you said, once again with the support of the Martini International Club. So I would like to thank you again for being part of, for having invited us of being part of the session. And with an invite by my side, if you have any photos, press cuttings or memorabilia that you would like to share with us to increase the collection that we have in our archive, please feel free to share with us. This is my email if you want a direct contact, but you can also ask to Jean for any other contacts. So thank you again, and I'm looking forward to hear about other stories on the cup.
Thanks, Anna.
Thanks, Anna. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
So Jean, I'll just hand over to you now to start the discussion with the players, and I'll just say to the people who are watching and the members, if you have any questions, I'll go around and ask for people for their questions, and if you just turn your mic on and your camera on and direct your question that way. But Jean, I'll hand over to you now.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Alex. Yeah, my question for the players, and I know some of you have got great stories about this, is away from the football, how did this experience of going to Italy change other aspects of your life? I know Barbara's got a great story about how it changed her taste for sparkling wine.
I remember the ice cream very well. The ice cream was just the best that I'd ever tasted while we were there. And that, to me, was a standout memory in much the same way as being on top of the Martini building. Everywhere you went, there were just these fantastic places to buy all of these flavours of ice cream like you'd never tasted before. It was amazing.
I suppose that's what I'm thinking of, Trudy. Did it change your, taste for different kinds of food? And when you came back and talked to your contemporaries at school and things, were you more kind of continental in your taste as a result of having travelled?
I think so, yeah, because I think for me, when we used to go anywhere to play football abroad, it always used to be a great opportunity to try the local food, and as you got a bit older, the local drink as well. But certainly it did open your eyes to all of that sort of thing. But it's strange what you say about talking about things when you got back at school and things like that, and to other people, because I think we've had this discussion before. We didn't talk about things like this when we got home, and part of that, I suppose, was to do with the fact that it was sort of frowned on, women playing football in those days, but you didn't really think to mention it. It didn't sort of seem to fit naturally into a flow of conversation anywhere. So you didn't really talk about it. But I remember asking my mum to make more spaghetti bolognese and things like that.
I suppose just the language of that life, people may not know. So when Chiltern Valley came back, particularly from Mexico, but also to some extent from Italy, the WFA, which had recently formed in 1969, handed out not just bans, some of which were short term, but Harry Bat eventually got what was termed a lifetime ban, which has always struck me. I think it's worth keeping this light and about the experiences of the players. But it's always struck me, given that women's football had been banned from 1921 to 1969. And then the WFA formed in 1969, and by 1971 they are handing out lifetime bans to people who had tried to pioneer women's football. It just seems to me bizarre. And I wonder if that's part of the reason for the silence that a lot of the players talk about.
Yeah, it maybe is. I just think the whole thing was handled atrociously. And really, the female game now, as it stands, when you look at the sponsorship, the deals, the way they play, the way they're trained, the way they're looked after, it's amazing. But that could have happened a good 20 or 30 years ago. And why would anybody want to stand in the way of that kind of progress? You can have all of the discussions around your sort of equalities and everything, but it is literally standing in the way of opportunity. And for what reason? Because as Paula says, she was as good as any boy. And as soon as they realised, she could have probably played in any team that she'd wanted to. But it was just the fact that she was a girl, that we were girls. The lifetime ban on Harry was the most atrocious thing ever. He was far-sighted, he was confident, he had the networks. He was a man with that vision, he could get things done. He was a doer rather than a talker. He was a doer, and he could literally get things underway, as we've all seen. And I think that, it's testament to him, really, that we all had the opportunities that we did, that came our way. So his background was necessary.
Yeah, I think all those years ago, there was more publicity for the girls that used to run around the football pitches in their hot pants, because in the 1970s, it was all about girls in hot pants, and they got all the press cover. I remember even my sister was asked to stand in, because we obviously at Chiltern Valley, we didn't have a goalie for one of the games, and she was a netball player. She was absolutely rubbish at playing football, but because she could catch a ball, they said she could go in goal for a game. And just after that, we had, I think it must have been the end of year get together with medals given and some press people there. And the only people they wanted to take a photo of was my sister, because she had a lovely catsuit on, blonde hair, and she had a picture on the front of the Luton paper with her arms up in the air with the ball, and all it said was, and she's the goalkeeper. And she'd only ever played once, and that's all they were interested in, was her and the glamour. And because we were all going out there to play football properly, nobody was really interested.
No.
Even when I left Chiltern Valley had to move to London and play for Crystal Palace, and we joined up with the men's Norwich team and Dundee men's team to play tournaments in Portugal. And Ron Saunders was the manager at that time, and he said that he wouldn't share the hotels, because we all stayed at the same place. He wouldn't share the hotels with all these dolly birds because it would detract from the men. Then he saw us playing and apologised and said, look, I didn't realise that you were serious about your game. And if you want to, we'll all stay at the same hotels. And even if you want to, if you have injuries, you're very welcome. And it was, but it was all about, perceiving that women just run around looking good and can't play.
Well, I think that all comes down to the fact that predominantly the sports writers were all male.
Yes.
Simple as that. So, when the male sports writers lead, everybody else follows, don't they? And that's how people's opinions get formed. And unless somebody comes along, as you've just described, and says, well, actually, it's not really like that. They can play. All you need to do is open your eyes. Yeah. And that's the opinion that people have got. And I think, in a lot of ways, coming back, it did raise the exposure, I guess, of the women's game. It was splashed all over, not always for the best of reasons or for the right reasons, but it did raise awareness of the game. But again, because so many people were standing in the way, it's just such a shame, because all of these years later we could have been so much further ahead than we are even now. I know my mum said to me when we were watching the games, the female World Cup last time around, she said, do you feel a little bit envious? Do you feel a bit jealous? And I said, well, no, not really. I'm so glad that they've got to where they've got to. It's fantastic. But really, what you're seeing now on the TV, where they're playing, how they're playing, that was us all of that time ago, but only ever abroad, not here.
Yeah.
Right.
I think we weren't even allowed to play in football stadiums when we were playing. But I do remember playing at the stadium in Yarmouth because I played in a charity match against, I don't know who, but I've got a photo of myself at the thing because Bruce Forsyth kicked off the match, and I've got a photo with him with the Chiltern Valley team, and I was probably only about 12 there. But that's the only time I remember playing in a stadium in England or Scotland or anywhere in the UK.
That's right, Paula, we did, didn't we? Played there. We also played at Hitchintown football ground.
Oh,
You can't remember that one?
No.
Yeah, I think it was Woolpit or something like that we played down in Yarmouth. Yeah. And the insight to the thing was, believe it or not, Dawn gave Bruce Forsyth the mumps.
Oh, yeah. Dawn was. It was her dad that talked my mum into letting me play football. But I've lost contact with Dawn. But I believe Angie's got contact with her.
Yeah. I'll speak to her. Yeah.
Can I ask Louise? Can I ask Louise a question? If you played for Southampton,
Yes.
and so did Sue Lopez, Sue Bucket.
Yes.
They obviously pulled out at the last minute.
Yeah.
How did that ban affect you? Because obviously they didn't turn up because of the ban, and obviously you did. So were you banned for a number of months?
Yeah, I was banned for about 6 months.
Right.
But I felt that Sue Lopez and that went out in 1969 to Italy, and I think they knew that this ban was going to happen.
Right.
That's why they didn't go in 1970, but they didn't tell me.
Oh.
No. So I still believe that the FA did not want women to play football. I've always believed that. Even today, I still think there's a bit of stigma with the women's football. Obviously, when we played, there was massive stigmas we had to put up with. But I still believe that. That's what I believe, that they just didn't want, for whatever reason. But I think there was a bunch of old men in charge of the FA that didn't even know how to play football. And then you get these women that turned up that we were of good standard. We were definitely all of good standard. And they just didn't want us to play. But I was lucky in some ways because the pitches we played on were terrible. We used to play at the Southampton Common and the pitches were very, very bad. But I was lucky because I used to train at the Dell. They used to let us train at the Dell. So we used to train there, met a few people there when we used to train. But yeah, I do believe that about the FA. So I'm not overly keen on the FA. But of course, they were very, very good to us because they sent us out to France. So I think it might be their way of, you know, what's that word where, you know, they weren't very good to us. I know it's 50 odd years ago, and they think, well, maybe we can make amends, but they need to do a bit more than that for me to make amends. Because I really loved the game, like you all did, you know, and I loved it. And it was so many reasons, you know, like it kept you fit. It kept me off the streets. Well, you know, I mean, not being a prostitute, but don't laugh. You know what I mean? But you know what I mean, though? It kept you on the straight and narrow. I was never involved with drugs and never got involved with the police. And, you know, I used to play football and that was it. I went to work, played football, loved it. I just had to put up with a lot of aggro, you know, because I was a woman playing football. And because I loved the game, I just got on with it. You know, I loved it, so I still played, but I used to have to put up with a lot of stigma and all that. And even today, it's a lot better now. I'm doing the men's walking football and just started this 11-a-side women's football. Apparently, you've got to play on 11-a-side pitch grass when it comes back. I mean, they reckon I'm going to be the super sub. 10 minutes and oxygen at the end.
Yes.
But, you know what I mean? But it's good for you. And I'm meeting a load of new people by doing it. No, and it's quite fascinating, that is. It's just that, like, we trained on Monday, and I keep going on about age, but I'm 66, and 2 girls were 15, and the other girl was 40. So it's a big gap, you know, and I'm still trying to keep up with them. But yeah, so I do believe that, but that's my own opinion about the FA. I really believe they didn't want women to play. Why? I never know. I never know. I don't know about anyone else would agree.
Yeah, because
agree with
sign off.
If you think about what was happening in other countries, I mean, I didn't have any idea how good the teams were abroad and how professional they were. I had no idea any of that was happening. I thought I'd hit the big time when I went to the Huey Green thing and saw all the girls playing there in teams. I was like, wow, you know. But then to go abroad and see that ramped up even more, I mean, you look back on it now and you think if they were doing it then at that time, why weren't we? And it goes back to what you were saying. There was only one lot of people standing in the way, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Louise, I think you'll find that the first time the FA recognised what we did 50 years ago was when they took us to Wembley. It was UEFA that took us over to France with the Keep Strong team that was going around at the time. So almost there, but not quite.
Yeah, and another thing as well, when you think about the sponsorship from Martini and, you know, the presentation that we've just watched and heard about, and their sponsorship through the ages, not only of male-orientated stuff, but female stuff as well. Where was the equivalent in this country? Because again, if Martini Rossi could do it and were full-flighted enough, excuse me, to do it then for ladies football, why wasn't anybody in this country doing it? It really makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Just going back to that photo that Anna put up, did you notice that it was our team at the top with June Batt?
Yes, and you.
Yeah, I was there, 10 feet taller than everybody else. Yeah. I think it'd be lovely to get copies of those too. Hopefully we can email Anna.
Yeah.
I think there was a mixture of players up there from another team because I didn't recognise some of them, but I wasn't there because obviously I was too young.
We were there.
Oh, definitely.
So, Jean, we've got a couple of questions now. So there's 2 questions for the panel. And first, I'd like to hand over to Beth. If you just want to switch your mic on, Beth, and your camera, and you go ahead and ask your question to the panel, please.
Perfect. Hi, ladies. I've got to say that, I mean, your stories about trying to get into football and playing with the boys, I mean, I was doing that 20 years ago, so it sounds so scary when you actually think there was a 30 years where women were struggling like yourselves and me. It's crazy how things have changed. My question was, I know you've gone about the tracksuits and hot pants. What sort of kit did you guys have to play in to kind of distinguish that you were England? Was there a crest, or did you just have to wear white or red? What did you guys actually have to wear?
We wore green and white. Believe it used to be the old Chiltern Valley kit. We actually took the Chiltern Valley kit over with us to Italy, as we had not got no proper kit. I don't think we actually ever wore all white, not in 1970.
No, we did have green tracksuits, some quite nice green
tracksuits.
Yeah, I think a few of us
Mexico.
Put our own badges, didn't we?
I think, Trudy, I think the green tracksuits were in Mexico.
Yeah, they weren't in 1970. No.
So are you ladies still proud to wear that kit? I know people say that they're proud to wear that England crest and represent your country, but even though you didn't have that physically on you, you ladies were still proud to represent our country in this way.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely, yeah.
Even though it says it's, you know, it's not really recognised as the first Women's World Cup. It's always the non-official one. You know, we still went out there and we played really hard. We played our hearts out for, you know, to representing our country. So it still feels like that we were, you know, we were the England team at the time, and I know Harry Batt did go all around the country looking for different players, and I think there were perhaps a few of the clubs that wouldn't release their players, you know, but at the end of the day, yeah, we all went out there and we all did our best, and we've all got those lovely memories. And you know, it's only now, I mean, it's gone on all this time, and this is the first time that we've all spoken about it, really, because you just say, oh yeah, I played in the Women's World Cup in Italy, and people don't really take any notice. But the last few years, it's all been, you know, it's been highlighted because our girls team now have been doing so well. So yeah, people are interested.
I don't know about anybody else, but certainly when I watched the World Cup, the last Girls' World Cup, Female World Cup, I got a little buzz from watching it and actually sitting there thinking, yeah, I did that. I played in big stadiums. I had those crowds. What an amazing experience. You know, it was just really nice to see. It was just so nice to see something that was more proportionate, let's say, on the TV rather than it just being the men all the time.
Yeah.
And just nice to know that you played your part in it, I guess.
And you ladies definitely have. You guys have, and it's so nice that you, Judy, that you've just said that, because you ladies have pioneered it. Even if the FA didn't see it then, you girls have, and we all wouldn't be here discussing this now. I'm sure I'm echoing what everyone else on this call is saying.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for answering, ladies.
Right.
Okay.
Next question. I'm obviously conscious of everybody's time, but there's a couple of really good questions. So Tom, if you could just turn your mic on, please. Over to you.
Good morning. You can see, I think you can see David Bowie over my shoulder there. Greetings from New Jersey. I teach history of soccer at a university here in New Jersey. And I went to grab this book off my bookshelf, which was written for last year's World Cup. And a friend of mine uses this phrase, welcome to the United States, where men are men and women win the World Cup. Right? So we like to brag about those World Cup titles. But when I go back and look at the prehistory, there is nothing in this book before 1985. So in your era, you know, this is kind of pre some legislation here in the United States, Title IX, which, you know, levels the playing field in schools and in clubs and funding. So I would love to know more about that kind of 1960s, 1970s story in the American context. So I have two questions. One, did you ever encounter any American teams in your travels, whether with England or a club? And then the subtitle here, you know, it says the women who changed soccer. I mean, I think your generation, your era are the ones who really changed it, although, you know, the U.S. gets, you know, all these accolades. So, you know, piggybacking on that other question, did you consider yourselves pioneers then? Yes or no? Or, you know, do you consider yourself pioneers now with the passage of time? Thank you.
Hello.
I would say we were all keen on playing the football and perhaps didn't think we were pioneers at the time. And that's something that's maybe come about retrospectively as the game and the exposure's maybe grown in this country. Perhaps all of us, I don't know, have looked back and gone, yeah, we played our part in that. That's just the way I feel anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I would agree, Trudy. That's exactly how I feel. We
Yeah.
never thought about being a pioneer.
No.
When Jean mentioned it, I was like, oh, right, now I've gone up in stature here.
I have a question for the questioner, if that's appropriate. Can I ask a question of the questioner?
Sure.
Of course you can, yeah.
Right, great, thank you. So yeah, I can't ever remember coming into contact with an American team of girls during the times that we played either at home or abroad, and I don't ever remember hearing mention of any. And then all of a sudden we have this fantastic team on the scene and have had for just a short number of years now, who are winning everything. What do you put that down to? Is it investment? Is it equality? What is it?
So when you look at like the prehistory of the national team, it's like 1985, and it comes out of a setting probably similar to Chillingham Valley Club, right? There was a place in North Texas who had a man who promoted it, put money behind it, trained the girls, and they kind of became like the de facto national team. They were sent overseas to kind of represent the United States. And then obviously the first official World Cup in 1991. But so I'm 51, and as a youth player, we had some girls playing with us, and then by about 10 or 11, things split, and there were all girls teams and all boys teams because you had enough players in the local club. So I really think from the youth level, it bubbles up, and then they have places to go, clubs, universities, and then the national team. So that, you know, really, you know, kind of percolated things, you know, from the grassroots on upward.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. And if everyone's okay, we've just got one more question from Ant. So if you could just switch your mic on, Ant, and ask your question to the panel, please.
Just, the 4-year-old's just running in as well now. I thank you, everyone. We really enjoyed that. See, it's my daughter Caitlin. Caitlin plays Saturday, Sunday with Leicester on Saturday, Loughborough Foxes on Sunday, and I really feel that she's in a football club and a pathway that owes so much to ladies such as yourselves. Also, when I was growing up, there was a very popular club that you'll all know that kind of changed where I come from, a club called Rosso Ladies, which was, even as a 12, 13-year-old, I used to walk, cycle down and watch it. And I often think about all these kind of people that have played the game over 30 years. When you were doing it, did you realise the legacy you were going to leave at the time? Or did it feel just a struggle at times to kind of play, to have the things that you would like? Or were you realising at the time the importance of what you were doing?
No, I don't think we realised at all the importance of what we were doing. We were just there for the love of football, really. You didn't think about the future. You just thought, we need to get out and win the game. And I think that's why, you know, our memories are not so good on all the things that happened around us at the time. We can remember the grounds and, you know, the people there. I don't know as it was too much of a struggle. It was just, you just went from day to day. You didn't think about how, I think now you realise that we did struggle, but at the time you just did everything you could to get to your training ground, to get the games, you know, all your pocket money or whatever you had, because we were all very young to be able to do all this. You just put everything into getting to the football game and playing and trying to win. So I don't think we thought about a legacy or anything. You just thought about, you're in the zone at the time and that's all you did, or that's all I did personally.
I think for me, I think it was, I got to, I think, realise things more and more once we got to Mexico, because then you sort of do take a stand back and you do look at the crowds and you do look at the crowd protection that you're getting and the autograph hunters and all of the rest of that, you know, just something that you've never ever experienced before. It hit me more in Mexico, which is why I think that I probably saved more from Mexico than I ever did from Italy or any of the other places. I've got much more from those times than the times that went before them, which is a real shame. But as Barbara says, I think we were just focused on getting to the match, getting to the training, making sure that you made the team for the match coming up, and keeping your place. That was it.
I think that's the same for all of us. With regards, it was just playing football at that stage. It is only now, when it's all been brought up in the media and stuff, that you think, oh yeah, well, I didn't think of that at the time, but I suppose what we did was very remarkable. And to be called a pioneer, yeah, then it's sort of, oh, I do speak about it more to people, whereas I haven't spoke about it for 48 years.
That's right. I think we'd have all been the same, wouldn't we? We'd all still been in the background. If Barbara and people like yourselves hadn't done this, none of us would have met up again anymore and been able to talk to each other. I think it's been a fantastic time.
Yeah.
Thank you for everybody coming and speaking.
Thank you very much. I just think one final comment from me was that I think one of the big legacies is that for someone like my daughter here, I feel that she's got a pathway, a genuine pathway, which probably might not have been there a few years ago, in terms of being a player all the way through to the age that you are now, and so much of being able to have a relationship to football as a player, as a coach, as an administrator. And I think that's one of the real good legacies that have come from all the people that have come before her.
Yeah,
so,
that's really interesting, really interesting. So how does it feel for her when she's playing? What's the experience like?
It's fun. You just go out every week, you do your training, then you go out and just play football.
Good for you.
Yeah, keep it up.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, ladies.
Cheers, Ant.
Thank you.
So I think that sort of concludes today's session. Jean, if you'd like to have any closing remarks or any further questions, Jean?
I think I'd just like to say thank you particularly to Anna for joining us and doing such a fantastic presentation in fantastic English. Certainly, I couldn't have done that in Italian. So thank you so much, Anna, for giving us that context. And thank you also, obviously, to Alex and to Paul and the Football Collective for giving us this platform. And I just think it's a really interesting way of doing history, to hear it direct from the players themselves in terms of their experience. And the first time we met, I told all of the players that they were absolute pioneers. They are absolutely inspirational, and many of us have followed in their footsteps. So just if everybody'd like to join me in a round of applause for our pioneers. Thank you very much, ladies, for speaking to us today.
Can I just say before we finish that this is the first time we've got together with anybody from the Martini group. We'd like to just say this is like the bottle that we got when we so we bought some Asti Spumante, which was the bottle that they put in our bags for us, and we were all really too young to drink it at the time. I know my mum drank it, and after that she would buy it every Christmas, and I followed the tradition. We had it. I had it for my wedding because I'm not a fan of champagne, so we had this, and we buy it every Christmas now and have it on the Christmas table. And I actually named my first golden retriever after this because she was very pale and bubbly, so she was called Asti. So we just want to say a very big thank you, a massive thank you to Martini and Rossi for everything they did to us and for playing a major part in our life. Thank you so much. And also obviously to the Football Collective, and Alex and Jean for making all this possible for our 50-year reunion. So thank you very much, and cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that concludes today, and I'd like to just extend the thank yous again, following Jean really from the Football Collective. It's been so insightful, so inspirational, and really to just finish off, you know, to reiterate what Jean said, you guys are pioneers. We wouldn't be sat here today if it wasn't for you. So thanks for participating. Thanks for everything. It's been brilliant.
Thanks for organising.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
See you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.